We're fighting for our country just like you.
I'm Jason Olborn and I'm running for the seat of Paterson for the United Australia Party. A little bit about me. I was born in 1972 and at just 10 years of age, my father told me by showing me the afternoon newspapers where we lived in Sydney that Bob Hawke had just been made leader of the Australian Labor Party on the same day as Malcolm Fraser called an election. It was a surprise move, and my father explained to me that it meant that the government was going to change and Bob Hawke would soon be made Prime Minister. From that moment on, I was totally hooked at understanding how countries worked, and I was just a primary school kid. I went to high school and attended the same high school as the current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. Please don't hold that against me. However, during that period of time in the 80s, I witnessed through the entire time of my high school life the Hawke-Keating government. And I tell you what, I was hooked because that's what we were talking about every single day. It seemed to be in that period of time that the Liberal Party couldn't get anything right, and the Hawke-Keating government went on to become the longest Labor government to serve ever, 13 years. So I learned all about the deregulation of the financial sector, the introduction of non-banking financial institutions, the floating of the Australian dollar, and a different way to do business to become internationally competitive. By 1986, the Hawke-Keating government was struggling because of the J-curve with the falling Australian dollar, which was meant to boost our competitiveness, which meant that our goods would become cheaper overseas. As a consequence, the importing became more expensive. The idea being that our balance of payments figures would become better balanced because we would import less goods as we exported more. Unfortunately, in that adjustment period, we just had to pay a lot more for the imports that we're hooked into, and our industries needed to get better. So as time went on and industry was meant to improve, things did improve, and we witnessed a very interesting period in the John Howard years from 1996 to 2007, where that government sailed very well economically based on the principles and systems that the Hawke-Keating government included, including wages reform and the Wages Accord series. It wasn't until very late in the game that John Howard admitted that the Hawke-Keating government did set him up for a very good period. The result being that over 30 years without a single recession in this country. Fast forward to the turbulent years after Kevin Rudd took over, and then we had Julia Gillard and the minority government, and then we went back to Kevin Rudd for a month before an election, trying to emulate the Hawke situation where he replaced Bill Hayden. It was a flop, and Tony Abbott won handsomely. And from there, we switched out of Tony Abbott to Malcolm Turnbull, and then we ended up with Scott Morrison. And we're in a very, very interesting period of time. And during the Howard Costello era, between 96 and 2007, the narrative shifted significantly. Because government debt had been paid back, not foreign debt, of course, that's a completely different scenario, but government debt had been paid back. It allowed the government to introduce the concept of a surplus. And this idea meant that the government would actually have money left over in case of emergencies. And during this boom period of time, Costello set up to create what was called the Future Fund. And the Future Fund was set up specifically to meet the liabilities of Commonwealth superannuation accounts that otherwise hadn't exactly been working appropriately, that were set up in the very early days that allowed for those early people to get significant results in terms of massive superannuation accounts. It swiftly changed from there, but at least this obligation was met, which many other countries couldn't do. So we move on from that period, and now we move into a very different period where we've moved from, and we struggle with the Labor Party struggling to keep surpluses after the 2008 GFC, and that is exactly what surpluses were about. However, the budgets were kept very, very tight over that period of time and only blew out in the last few years to about $100 billion. Today, on the eve of the budget, March 29, we now see government debt going way past $1 trillion as a result of what we've seen during COVID and COVID borrowing when they locked down our economy for 2 years. So as you can tell, I'm very, very aware of what's going on in the economy, and I'm capable of calling out where people have got things wrong. And this is the point of being in politics, not because we want to just get in there and have a go and get a job, but we see what the government and the opposition are doing, and we're calling them out on their failures at what they're doing for the Australian people. So as it stands right now, the issues concerning the people of Paterson and what they're telling me are very, very simple. We're concerned about coal and the industry there in light of what's happening with the green movement and the move away from coal as a polluting form of energy. The thing is, we are closing down our coal-fired power stations, but at the same time, China and India are ramping them up. For the handful that we have here, there are over 1,500, and they're still coming and building them in China and India. That means that they have to buy their coal from somewhere else. Does that mean we cut off our nose to spite our face and shut down our coal industry? No, we don't, because Hunter Valley coal is simply the best in the world. It burns 3 times more efficiently than Indonesian or US coal. And if we don't sell our coal to those power stations in China and India, guess what? They're going to have to buy less efficient coal at the same prices from the US and Indonesia. And that would be a disservice to Australia, certainly a disservice to the people of Paterson, and definitely to the environment for all the reasons that you are trying to explain that carbon dioxide is the problem. So what are we going to do about it? Well, firstly, what we need to do is understand that until 2030, China and India, as so-called developing nations, are not required to pay a carbon tax, where in Australia and the rest of the world we are. So that means that whilst we'll pay more for the purpose or the privilege of polluting, those in China and India don't, which gives them a handsome discount. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Both the Labor and Liberal governments of Australia have not even addressed the price of carbon, so we don't even know what that will add to the price of petrol, which also pollutes. Does that mean the government's just going to hand out electric cars? And if it's that simple, why aren't we having the debate about lithium mining and what we do after 7 years of battery recycling in that situation? This is also environmentally unfriendly. Furthermore, why aren't the Labor Party and the Greens even talking about industrial hemp? This is a completely different scenario that not only when you plant it, it improves the land, fixes up contaminated soil, but gives us 1,500 different products, including food, fuel, clothing, medicine, and building materials, just to name a few, that can be used in renewable sources and does not pollute and can be grown on the farm and processed on the farm, introducing both primary and secondary industry. Now, this is a completely different topic, off platform in terms of where you're going, but it's asking the Greens and the Labor Party why it's not even on the agenda. If you're going to wipe out Hunter Valley coal, you'd better introduce something that's going to replace it and not just say, as Meryl Swanson said in a Sky News interview, well, there are lots of jobs being created, for example, flying drones. Are you serious, Meryl? Come on. The people of Paterson are worth more than this, and they need to be protected. Furthermore, housing prices blew up during the period of COVID, where a 4-bedroom brick and tile in the suburb of Rutherford you could easily purchase for under $500,000, but today is already over $700,000 for the same house. This is unacceptable, particularly when interest rates, because of COVID, and have already gone up in the US and the UK. But in Australia, we have this very strange idea that interest rates don't go up in the lead up to an election because they feel like it might unjustly penalise an incumbent government, but will certainly put them up straight away, particularly as the US and the UK have already put their interest rates up by 0.25% and have indicated that they'll need to go up by at least 2% during this calendar year. So I'll ask you this question. If you're currently paying 2.5% on your home loan, can you afford to pay 4.5% on your home loan? In particular, if you've bought a home for, say, $600,000 with 5% down and carrying a mortgage of around about $570,000 or $580,000. Let's look at those numbers on the screen behind me. So we are in for the fight of our lives, and we haven't even got through the rest of the agenda because jobs are paramount. Take the jobs out of Paterson, put 15,000 people out of work, particularly with the mining industry and the related industries of mechanics, machinery, hospitality, accommodation, food service, all of the different industries, retail, etc. So how do you prepare for that, and why aren't the government actually talking about it in ways that we can fully understand what is going on? Now, here's the big one. Our kids, the Hunter Valley and certain pockets of it are characterized by enormous amounts of child abuse. And this is something that needs to be addressed, and in particular, take action. We need to change rules, we need to audit, and we need to be fully transparent in what we're going to do. But that may not apply to all children and may certainly be a very uncomfortable subject for some. Now, for all children, we cannot leave them with the burden of a debt of over $1 trillion that can never be paid off according to the Liberal and Labor governments. We need to work out another way to do it. This is probably the single biggest thing about what the United Australia Party will offer on top of their interest rate policy that's coming for homeowners, but also for our kids. How do we pay off over $1 trillion in debt? You need to look out on April 7 when the policy will be announced at the National Press Club in Canberra, and it will feature in political advertising from that point on. I look forward to hearing from the local media, the Maitland Mercury, the Port Stephens Examiner, and certainly the Newcastle Herald, as I go to explain our policies that represent the people. And the media needs to stop pretending that we don't count. These are policies that are affecting all Australians, and the media needs to stop playing games and start listening to what people are concerned about. The Labor and Liberal parties do not hold the monopoly on economic rationalism, on policy that can save Australians. On the contrary, they are headed down a very different path where they are answerable now to organisations such as the World Health Organization, such as the World Economic Forum, and they do not necessarily have our best interests at heart. When you hear from the World Economic Forum that you will own nothing and be happy as its manifesto. What does that mean? Sounds like to me the idea of interest rates going up is certainly not a priority for our government. But for the United Australia Party, it certainly is, and we represent all Australians. And it doesn't matter what you think about the way the party has come together, the way the party is financed. You'll be voting for me. I have not taken a single cent from the party for my local campaign. I won't take any donations from anyone out there because I am my own man. I am uncontrolled opposition, and I work for the people of Paterson. I work for my children, I work for my family, and I work for all of yours too. I hope you come along to check out what I've got to say at our Friends of Freedom rally, because I am a transparent candidate and I will show you amongst all other candidates in a one-stop shop where you can ask questions of all of the candidates, including the Lib Dems, including the IMOP party, including the Legalised Cannabis Party and the Great Australian Party. And if you're a member of another party and you resonate with what I'm saying, you are more than welcome to come along. Please check out my website, jasonolborncandidate.com, or the unitedaustraliaparty.org.au. You can even reach out to me. My phone number is published on my Facebook page, Jason Olborn Candidate, Paterson, UAP. Please check it out. I am delighted to serve the people. It is a difficult task. We're doing this as candidates for free. It's money coming out of our own pockets, but none of that counts, because if we're not here for our kids and leave them a better country than we received, we have not done our job. And this is the reason that I'm standing up today. I'm Jason Olborn, and I hope to see you very, very soon at one of our events. Thank you, and I'll see you later. Authorised by J. Olborn for the United Australia Party, Merrimack.